I heard that. It said recording in progress.
Yeah, we're all good. You can go ahead, Marty.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. This is an opportunity to test the limits of our technology. Welcome to the Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee of September 2003. MCB4 has adopted a hybrid meeting policy whereby we will meet both in person and virtually. All community board member committee meetings will require an in-person quorum to come to order and to conduct business. Board members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability or an extraordinary circumstance as defined by the New York State Open Meetings Law. Excused committee members and members of the public will be able to participate virtually. Committee members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. We encourage members of the public to join virtually. MCB4 hybrid policy can be found on our website. And we are recording and streaming on YouTube. And I want you to know, Jesse, I'm going to save this piece of paper. I'm going to frame it. Our agenda, which I think you may all have looked at, contains 4 items. The Department of Parks on the plan for the 26th Street Park, New York for Parks, and the 1% of the city budget. I always get PO'd when I see that because I know that it's less than, it's around 5% of the city budget, not 1%. And a discussion of the district needs, which is a very preliminary discussion. And finally, we need to have a discussion, at least one piece of new business, old business, is that we need to discuss taking on Department of Sanitation issues from the ACES committee. And we'll talk more about that when we get to it. I favor it, but we'll talk about it then. Is the Department of Parks ready to make that presentation? And will the presentation be on the website?
Yeah, we can give you a copy of the presentation after we've concluded.
Thank you. So take it away.
All right. Okay, so thank you all for coming. This is for the design of Penn South Playground. And we are on 26th Street between 8th and 9th Avenues. And we have a budget of just under $5 million, the majority of which came from Councilmember Botcher, also with contributions from Mayor Adams and Borough President Mark Levine. So the goals that we came out of our community input meeting with are to create a destination point within the neighborhood by adding amenities and play features with a strong focus on accessibility. And that was a theme that came up under all facets of the park and what it could become. We're going to be upgrading the sports courts. We're going to be facilitating multi-generational passive use, seating areas for people of all ages and abilities, improving access, circulation, and sight lines within the park like we do with all of our projects. And just to orient you a little bit, we are in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan. On the right, you can see here we're on 26th Street between 8th Avenue and 9th Avenue, and there's actually a small portion of the site that connects down to 25th Street. These are just some context slides that show we are out of any current and future flood hazard zones. Just outside here on some of the more extreme flooding future scenarios. Here we're showing the context within the surrounding land use. Like you're all familiar with, we are within the Penn South Cooperative Housing Campus. This slide showing the park's context within the area. The Penn South Playground is at the center of the circle here, and the smaller circle represents a 5-minute walk of a 1/4 mile. And within that space, we have Chelsea Park nearby and the Chelsea Rec Center. And the larger circle there represents a 10-minute walk of about a half mile. And within that area, there are a number of very recognizable parks like the High Line, Bella Abzug Park up by Hudson Yards, just opening up more recently. And here we have our existing conditions of the site. There are basketball and volleyball courts on the left-hand side of the site. And just to orient you a little bit, 26th Street is at the top of the site and 25th Street is at the bottom. So along 26th Street, we have one main entrance that is near the playground and seating area, and there's another entrance to the left that is for the court area. And the playground area currently is just open. There's a lot of kind of passive seating, the game tables along the back building that are also kind of all intertwined with the playground space. And part of the feedback that we heard during that community board meeting was to kind of separate those spaces and provide a more safe enclosed playground space and move that passive seating to a more appropriate location. There's also, as you note here in that safety surface space, there's an elephant figurine, which was near and dear to those that attended the community input meeting that we'll be looking to keep and relocate within the site. There's also a flagpole that's towards the rear of the site that we'll be looking to remove to provide a little bit more space for the playground. We also have this alley space that connects down to 25th Street that was previously a dog run that was relocated to Chelsea Park recently. And here's a bit of a analysis of the park. You can see in the yellow here, that's more of our sunny area where we would be looking to incorporate a spray shower. And you can see the kind of black and red safety surface tiles that are in disrepair, as well as the outdated play equipment. And here along the bottom half in the orange, you can see the area that was previously the dog run that's been opened up to allow for circulation from 25th Street to 26th Street. But in addition to that circulation within the park, there is also a narrow sidewalk that's in these pink dots connecting from 25th Street to 26th Street that is not our property and that we will not be touching as part of this project. So that will be open after our renovations are done as well. This is showing the mature, healthy tree canopy that we have on site. The majority of the trees are doing well. There's only one tree in that alley area that will be removed due to poor condition. And as part of the project, we'll be looking to improve the condition of those existing trees as well. Here you can see a view from 26th Street looking into the park. You can see the play area on the left and some of the larger trees throughout the site as well. And as part of the project, we'll be looking to reduce this perimeter fence from 7 feet down to 4 feet as well. And in addition to that, we'll be pulling that perimeter fence out to the furthest extents of our property lines, so we can gain a little bit more space inside the park for play and for courts and for seating. So you can see kind of along the curb here, that's actually our property line. So we'll be looking to pull the fence all the way out to where these low decorative blue panels are. Here's a view of the existing sports courts. You can see that tall 7-foot steel fence that'll be lowered to 4 feet along the right-hand side there. You can see the tree pits. The trees are in the granite block cobble. So we'll be enlarging those as much as we can along the perimeter and along the interior as well. The courts will be reconstructed with new asphalt and new color seal coat. And we'll be removing a lot of this redundant fencing that's along some of the adjacent buildings as well. Here's a view of the seating here, as well as the play equipment. And you can see that elephant figurine, which will be relocating within the playground. And that flagpole, which is in the rear, will be getting removed as part of the project as well. And here's a view of that same playground space from the opposite side. play equipment, and the kind of seating that's kind of tucked away into the back of the site. That kind of lends itself to more illicit use. So we'll be bringing that to the front of the site, making it more visible, making it easier to access as well. And here is the narrow portion that was previously the dog run that's since been opened up. Along that alley, you still have that 7-foot fence that'll be coming down to 4 foot. And on the right side here, you can see that chain link fence against the building that'll be coming out as well. And the rightmost picture shows that narrow sidewalk that's not our property, but will be as is, and that perimeter fence will just be reduced to 4 feet along there. So from that community input meeting back in June, we came out with these priorities. A focus on inclusive play, including ground play, ramps, slides for all ages and all abilities. There was also a call to include swings. Currently they weren't there, as well as water play and spray showers. And both of those things were done with accessibility and inclusivity in mind. The courts were also a priority. Volleyball and basketball were both used on site frequently, and providing seating that's accessible, benches and game tables, and providing more of a quiet space for people to sit. So here is that design that we've come up with since we received your feedback. Along the left-hand side, we maintain the more active sport area. We have one volleyball court and one basketball court. And as a result of that community input meeting, because of the demand for swings compared to the basketball and volleyball representation, we took some of the space that was previously for the sports court area and made that into the swing area that you see here. We have a number of swings, and we have some other inclusive features that lend themselves to that swing area. On the top right, we have a 2 to 5 play area. Just below that in the blue, there will be a spray shower. That's kind of in that yellow area from the analysis slide that we looked at, where it was a little bit sunnier. And below that, to the bottom left, there will be a larger 5 to 12 play unit that will include some ramped play to get wheelchair users up kind of into the play and into the excitement as well. On the right-hand side of the site, in the yellow, you'll see that area as asphalt with painted games, and it'll be activated kind of throughout with different games, different accessible features, and we also have some children's tables and seats along there as well. And in between the court area and the play area along the front of the site is where we have the majority of the seating. There's a number of benches, a couple of game tables, one accessible game table. And along the front there, we also have a drinking fountain as well. And near the court area, we also have a bottle filler. So here's an enlargement of that main space. It's in the bottle filler here. And as part of this project, we'll also be providing lighting throughout the entire site. And you can see along the front, we have these larger tree pits, the smaller tree pits that have been enhanced into larger plant beds with some fuller plant material. We'll be providing trash cans throughout the entire site, and the basketball and volleyball courts will be done with the color seal coat as we typically do. The playground space will have a 3-foot steel fence enclosing it with a double gate at the entrance. That was another call from the community input meeting, that they wanted a sense of separation and the ability to close off and kind of keep kids contained within the playground space. Whereas previously the passive seating was mixed in with the playground space, and it led to some misuse. And here along near the entrance to the playground, you can see where we have the elephant figurine relocated within the safety surface. We also have some of these painted games, which I'll show you some examples of in just a minute. So on the top left here is the Sway Fun unit, which is an accessible and inclusive feature that would be located near the swings. It's more of a horizontal glider that will have a ramp that can allow wheelchair users access to. The play dome in the middle on the top there will be a feature of the 2 to 5 play area, which offers more of a quiet and withdrawn play variety, play type. In the 5 to 12 area, we'll have more ramped play, like I mentioned, to get wheelchair users up into the site. That's on the bottom left. And here's an example of some of the painted games. You see the yellow dashed lines with some bugs. We have these, the triple hoop, which would be located along the more narrow portion of that site with a series of these painted games around it. And it's kind of shooting spots in a kind of outwardly spiraling design. And this is the whirly gig, which has a hand crank here in the red, which spins the design on the top, which is another kind of wheelchair accessible feature to kind of activate that more narrow area. And here's just another few examples of that sway fun in use and how it can be accessed via the ramp. And here is the spray shower plan. And from that community input meeting, there were a lot of, we showed some example and precedent slides that showed these spray loops, which have kind of a finer mist, which are accessible. And they can, it's at the height where a wheelchair can easily go underneath that space. In addition to that, we have a typical kind of ground spray, the fountain spray here. And each of those would be activated by a bollard where you just push and the water will be activated within that spray shower. And that would all be within a colored concrete pavement. Here are some examples of the play equipment. This is the 5 to 12 age unit that's on the bottom left of that playground space. We have a couple of slides, some of the ramped play, a number of climbing features as well. Here's the 2 to 5 unit. There's the play dome, which has a quieter play area. And we're incorporating a lot of these play panels throughout. So that's another kind of more wheelchair accessible feature. And just a small slide and small kind of stepped unit. And here's an example of the slide layout. So you can see the sway fun over here with the ramp and some play panels. We have some play panels separating the swing from the sway fun because it has a little bit of a more horizontal motion. So so we can control some of the circulation around there a little bit better. And we have a variety of swing types, the straps, the typical bucket, and an inclusive seat as well. Here is our fence diagram. So along the perimeter, we'll be lowering that 7-foot steel fence down to a 4-foot steel fence all the way around, maintaining the existing main entrance, and the secondary entrance along 26 would be shifted slightly, not to intrude on the court area. And the 25th Street entrance would stay in the same location. Around the playground, we have a 3-foot steel fence that's shown in that solid green. That's also used to separate the swing area from the rest of the playground. There would be a small section of 10-foot chain link fence, which would separate the basketball court from the swing area as well. So that leaves the playground space totally enclosed by this double gate at the entrance here. Keeps those inside a little bit safer and separated from those using the passive space or the basketball court area. And the rest of the plant beds would be behind a 2-foot pipe rail fence just to keep them a little bit protected and prevent any unwanted trampling of the plants in there. Here are a couple examples of the furnishings we typically provide for the sports court area. Basketball hoop, volleyball court, net and accessories, trash receptacles, and by the sports area, we would have the bottle filler with the high-low drinking fountain, wheelchair accessible, great if you need to fill up a water bottle while you're playing, as well as a typical bench seat and lighting. And these are some of the furnishings from the other portion of the site. We'll have concrete and steel game tables, one standard and one accessible. To the right, you can see an example of the children's table and seat. That would be along the more narrow portion of the site. And the drinking fountain, which would be by the main entrance on 26th. And we would also add a couple of bike racks near the main entrance between the two entrances on 26th Street as well. And notched into the fence along 26th as well would be a number of trash enclosures to help keep the trash situation in order and not out of control, as well as placing a number of trash receptacles throughout the site. Here's an example of some of the plant palette that we'd be using. We have a couple of spots where we can add some small flowering trees. That was another request of the community input meeting, as well as another shade tree to replace the one that was lost along the alley. And just some other kind of tried and true, pretty hardy species that can thrive in our city parks. And as a result of all these changes to the plant beds and the tree pits, we're going from a 9% permeability up to 20% by expanding a lot of those plant beds and getting rid of the granite block and making them plant space. And here finally is a comparison between the existing and the proposed conditions that we have here today. As a note, we did meet with Councilmember Botcher last week, and he had voiced his approval for, or his inclination towards keeping the 2 basketball courts and volleyball courts. We maintain that as a result of all the feedback that we got from the community input meeting, that it was more important that we include the swing area at the sacrifice of the court area, which was often misused by dog owners or underutilized throughout the week. And you can kind of see just as showing with that green over the swing area, that's the same size as the volleyball court. So that would essentially eliminate the swing area if we wanted to maintain 2 basketball courts and 1 volleyball court. And that is it. And I'm happy to take any questions from you or help clarify anything. Thanks.
Thank you for a really nice presentation. I think I'm going to ask you to take the shared screen down so that I can see everybody. I see Chris, and I'll let him go first while you're doing that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you, Alex, for your presentation. One, I just really want to call out that we appreciate permeability statistics coming out. This is something that our committee speaks about often when we discuss park renovation. And secondly, we appreciate that there's going to be a program to maintain our mature tree canopy in that area. Questions and comments. I'll start with questions. As it relates to the basketball court, is it of regulation standard?
Yeah, I believe we have it's a modified size to fit the extended length, but the width is of I think it's a high school size that we have. Okay, so it's appropriate for children to play on. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay. Second question is, with your trash receptacles, is recycling a part of the parks program?
It isn't at the moment, no.
Okay. With regard to trash enclosures, will the trash enclosures be steel, or are they going to be mobile in order to comply or to meet the standard DSNY is testing right now in Harlem for trash pickup?
They would be steel. So we'll have, if you don't mind, I'll share again. You can show you the plan.
When we saw it, I just wanted to see what, yeah. Thirdly, lighting in the alleyway. Are there plans to create lighting for safety? That's an area where dog walkers and everybody's still going to traverse. It's a public right of way. So is there a lighting plan for that?
Yeah, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights along that whole side, and there is some existing lighting from that adjacent building, but we'll be adding a number of lights there. And we work with DOT throughout that process to make sure there's optimal spacing for the light poles.
Last 2 questions and a comment is going to follow up with a question. Sure. First question is, what's the contextual history to those granite and concrete flagpoles that we see in parks. I've noticed them in NYCHA, I've noticed them in Chelsea, I've noticed them here in Hell's Kitchen. Like what was the logic behind that design previously?
So for that, we kind of have this playground space, and the existing flagpole is not in an ideal location. It really takes up a lot of space, and you need a lot of space around it if you're going to have play features there. It wasn't really, nobody at the community input meeting requested it to stay. So in that scenario, we typically remove it so we can have more play space in this scenario.
Okay, but typically those flagpoles were built in recognition of the veterans that live in the neighborhood, correct? For our foreign wars?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, and last question is going to be followed by a comment. The council member had pushed back on the loss of 2 basketball courts and the maintenance of a volleyball court. The volleyball court that you presented appears to be kind of like an open rec area, knowing that there can be adult abuse of, or misuse rather, recreation space built for children. Will there be programming for volleyball?
Yeah, so that volleyball court would be striped. There would be post infrastructure built into the park, and we have a job box that would be able to house like a net or something like that for the constituents that use it. I know it gets a lot of heavy use on the weekends and not so much during the week.
And last question, will there be a sign that's prominent outside of the entryway noting the rules of use for children's recreation space, that adults that are using the space must give right of way to children after school programs that are seeking to use those recreational spaces?
We will have appropriate signage. I can't speak to whether it would be kind of seated at the request of a school or anything like that, but we would have signage.
But at least that there's a priority to children's use and family use versus adult use.
I would defer to our M&O staff on that. I'm not familiar with that language specifically, but the one thing I can speak to is that we would have specific signage around the playground that would be more in relation to adults only in the company of children and along those lines for the playground, since it is enclosed.
Okay, for the playground, but not the other recreational spaces.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris. Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Marty. To Chris's point, I'm curious about the recycling cans. Is that something that could be added to the park? Because I know that those are placed in certain city parks. So I'm just wondering if that's a possibility here.
It is a possibility. We can speak to our M&O staff a little bit more. I know sometimes it is a little bit difficult getting the recycling handled properly.
Okay, I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the committee, but I think it's something that I would personally like to see is recycling cans.
Yep. We can certainly look into that.
And then
You're definitely speaking on behalf of the committee.
Oh, fair enough. And then the fencing, I was just curious, a lot of trash can get trapped. And I'm really thinking about sort of, for lack of a better word, the alley sort of way in the park. The fence between the park and the building, there's a ton of trash that just gets stuck between there. So I'm just wondering, and I guess maybe just to clarify, is that fence staying, I guess it would be on the east side fence running down the alleyway, and is there a reason why that couldn't be removed? Because it looks like the one on the west side would be taken down.
So the one on the west side is ours, and that's the one we're reducing from 7 feet to 4 feet. The one on the east side is not ours, and we have no say in that fence, unfortunately.
Whose fence is it?
I think it's most likely DOT's property, that alleyway.
No.
I think that property is Penn South.
Yeah, the alleyway is, Martin is correct. The alleyway belongs to the co-op.
Okay.
And whose fence is that? The reason I asked the question is that's a 7-foot fence currently, and
Yep.
you're talking about 4-foot fences. I'm sure that one of the committee members is going to raise the fence issue, so I won't start that discussion now. Is anybody going to raise that issue? Me? Okay. I'm concerned about, this committee has been concerned about 4-foot fences in our neighborhood. I'm not particularly concerned about this parks of having a 4-foot fence. The 7-foot fence along the alleyway, you just said is going to stay.
No, that'll be reduced to 4 feet. The entire perimeter fence of Penn South Playground would be reduced.
Now you're confusing me. You said the fence along the Penn South walkway was not yours.
On the east side of the walkway. On the west side of the walkway, adjacent to our property, the edge of our property, that is the 7-foot fence that we'd be reducing to 4 feet.
And the fence on the east side of the property is already about 4 feet.
No,
On the east side of that walkway is about
Yes.
4 feet.
That's right.
So I have some concern about the basketball courts late at night. Is there a way that you can close them off with a 4-foot fence? I would argue you can't.
So those gates will be locked. The lighting that we have isn't for sports lighting. It's just the low, typical security lighting.
Is the lighting of the old style lamps that you showed, they're all going to be the same as that one you showed?
That's right. And we specifically don't light the back of the court area. It's all along the front and the playground space, so as to not provide sufficient lighting to play at night, that type of thing.
That doesn't stop folks from playing basketball well after dark. There's a lot of ambient light there. Okay.
Yeah, that becomes more of a monitoring and a policing type issue.
Hey everyone, our internet's down. So we're working on that right now. 1 second. There we go. Can you hear me, Martin?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, we're just working on getting the host back up.
Oh, I see. The room is gone. So that's fabulous.
So
I told you this was going to be a test of the technology, but I didn't expect this glitch. While you're fixing it, can you hear me in the room?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask, Adam has his hand raised, and just to keep it moving, he wants to say something, I think.
Well, we can't do anything that's not on the record being recorded.
And it's not being recorded because the room's not up. Got it.
Marty, you can keep on going. Keep on going.
Go ahead.
Is the parks guy on too?
Yeah, I think they all were able to stay on.
I have a question, Marty. Brad.
Yeah, Brad, wait a minute, Brad, I've been instructed not to speak while they're getting the recording back up. I know that's hard.
Yeah. Hey. All right, we're back. We're back. Just give me a second, and we're still recording, and we're still streaming. So, all right.
So let me go to Adam, who has something to say, and then what the hell, and then to Brad.
Yeah, I just asked if I could just get it. I think we cut out just at the tail end of maybe Alex responding to my question about the fence and just who owns the fence there, just because of the trouble with a ton of trash that gets lodged between the fence and the building there. And if it could be reduced or removed, it would help clear out a lot of debris.
You're talking about the chain link fence that's next to the sealed up convent. That convent has been sealed up.
Maybe it's on the east side of the alley. I don't think is it?
The convent of the west side.
Yeah, no, it's the other side of the alleyway. So anyway, I was just curious.
East side.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Alex, do you know?
So in regards to the trash there, if it's between our fence and the Penn South kind of area, that since that sidewalk is belonging to them, that's kind of more of their issue. Our park staff will clean up within the park as they typically do, but I'm not sure if that's something we can handle on a regular basis. Maybe Steve can speak to that a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, the trash would have to be within our property line for us to be cleaning it out.
And that fence doesn't belong, that's not on Parks property. And I'm talking about the east side along the alleyway, just as a,
Yeah, that's the Penn South.
okay, that's a Penn South fence.
Yeah.
Okay, so why are you?
I walk that piece a lot, and I have seen trash on the park side. I usually don't see trash on the Penn South side. They're reasonably good at picking up and keeping the property trashless. Not entirely, but it isn't perfect. But so we're talking about removing trash from the west side of the fence that is on the west side of that walkway.
East side. Can you just pull it up? Yeah, so the east side of the alleyway. I mean, it's really on both sides, but it looks like the chain link fence was coming down on one of the sides, but yeah, maybe pulling it up would be helpful.
Alex, could you pull that up?
Yeah, sure.
And just real quickly, there's a number of people in attendees with their hands up. We'll get to you after Marty runs through the folks on the committee.
So on the right side, you can see our 7-foot fence that's coming down to 4 foot, and in the distance, you can see that what looks like a 4-foot steel fence as well. If that's something you wanted to have taken down, that would be up to their. I think that's adjacent to their more maintenance yard. That would be something to discuss with them.
That fence isn't. There's no reason to talk to them. That fence outlines a parking lot for the powerhouse.
Yep.
And I have a lot of money that I would bet that fence is not coming down.
No, that's fine. What about on the opposite side, the fence there against that's the congregate. That fence right there.
That's the park's fence, and that type of redundant fencing will be taken down as part of the project. Okay. There won't be any chain link fence along those buildings.
Okay, great. And then just lastly, what's the timeline for the work?
Our construction timeline is 1 year. We have our design scheduled to finish up in June of next year. And then we typically have about a 1 year procurement process, which would lead us to be breaking ground in 2026 of June, hopefully.
Great, thank you so much.
Marty, can you see hands?
I haven't got that turned on. I was just writing that down. What I heard. I beg your pardon.
Sorry if I can interrupt. The hands that are raised in the attendees are other parks.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll be able to see that in a second.
Sure.
Hold on 1 second. Alex, you're saying those are parks folks?
Yeah, John Ernsberger and Leslie Peoples are my supervisors, so they might have something to add to this.
I think I just got speaking rights. Hi, this is John Ernsberger.
I actually think we should bring them over.
I will do so.
Don't forget they have to accept your invitation. That fence against the convent, that property goes all the way to the convent wall. I don't know what's going to happen to that convent. When I walked by it the other day, I noticed that the doors were sealed up. Does that and that might mean they're going to do something with that building? Does that affect anything that's going on here?
We don't really know when anything with that is going to happen. So as part of the perimeter there, we put in a curb against the wall just as a good practice, and it helps with kind of waterproofing and keeping the water out of going directly into the building. So there'll be a curb there that could handle a new fence in the future, but that would likely get disturbed during any of their construction.
And the curb will go up against the building, so the trash issue disappears when the fence disappears.
Exactly.
That works, right?
Yeah.
Thanks. Are there any other questions in the room or by members online?
We've got hands in the room. Do you see the hands in the room, Marty? Or do you want me to call them out?
Please, Jesse, would you?
James Savage.
Hi, 2 questions. First one, for the painted games that are in the little alleyway, those bugs do not look familiar to me. Will there be QR codes or anything that explains how those games function, or will they be purely decorative?
They'll be more decorative. There's like a hopscotch towards the bottom, and we have those kind of bugs stationed around the triple hoop area in what would be kind of more of like a horse like shooting spot around there. And they're just meant to connect some of the different play features.
There wouldn't be
Got
any, there wouldn't be anything complicated there.
There wouldn't be a
Okay.
QR code or anything like that.
Yeah, they have a number and it explains how to count the spots on their back, basically. That's what you learn
Okay.
from them.
Okay, well, I mean, it would make sense if it's supposed to be a game, that there are instructions on how to play the game, not just it being painted there. Or else it could be anything.
Kids make up their own rules.
And then, I was just curious about the fence height situation. Did anyone comment about the proposal of dropping it down to 4 feet and being worried about security?
I started to mention it, Katie. Thank you so much for bringing it up again.
So that's kind of more of our typical policy at this point, is reducing those large 7-foot fences down to 4 foot. If we do have, typically, if you have pushback from you and you prefer to keep it higher, something we can do is typically a 5-foot fence, but we try not to leave the 7-foot fence in place.
Just to speak on behalf of the policy as it is, the intent is to get that top bar of the fence out of the eye line of many adults so that they can see freely into the park. And that helps with monitoring activity that's going on there and it feeling like a continuation of the neighborhood. Just to speak on its behalf, but I understand that, and we should be hearing your opinions on the matter.
Thank you.
Slow turn.
All right, let's start with the fence.
No. Yeah, fence, Lowell, are you talking about fence?
I've got 4 easy things in the fence. Which do you want first?
Do the fence because we're talking about it now.
Do the fence. In the decade I've been on this committee, every time Steve and his people have come here, we have said we want a 7-foot fence because historically, because of the nightclubs along 10th Avenue, the playgrounds get used after dark for nefarious purposes. The Marquee nightclub is half a block from this playground. And we want a 7-foot fence because that's what we've done everywhere, including at Seal Park. And Steve, if you need me to remind you about the fights you and I had about that. When Commissioner Silver was in place, he came up with this Parks Without Borders thing that we fought against. The park at 20th Street Park, we had a 7-foot fence. At Seal Park, we had a 7-foot fence. The DEP park up in Hell's Kitchen, we have a 7-foot fence. There is not a tolerance in this neighborhood for 4 or 5-foot fences.
20th Street Park has 5.5-foot fence, but point taken, definitely.
All right, because we fought back against Commissioner Silver when he started the Parks Without Borders thing. And we have had 7-foot fences everywhere. Steve, I know you remember those conversations.
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, 4 easy ones now. Is the volleyball net up permanently?
The net will not be up permanently.
All right, so that's an open play space for the most part then. The flowering trees, where are those located? Are those going to drop flowers and petals all over your play area, making it slick, slippery, or what have you?
No, they're relatively small trees and they're located within larger plant beds, so there will be limited kind of dropping in the play area.
Okay, will there be night lighting for the basketball court?
No, there's no lighting in that back corner area. It's all along 26th Street and in the playground space.
The basketball were once upon a time lighted for night play. And we had a former member of this committee who was asking for this playground to be redone for about a decade and wanted the lighting redone. So I'm channeling him and asking for night lighting on the basketball court.
The second one,
That was Brett's thing for years.
Okay, so sports lighting like that requires us to have a separate metered service because DOT pays for our park security lighting, our standard lighting. So you're going to get if we had that, a very large utility box out in the landscape as well, just to put some context on that. And it would have to be a discussion on, parks taking that on as well in terms of paying for the metered service of the lighting.
I'm just relaying what's been asked for close to a decade now, so I mean, I have no, stake in this one,
Okay.
but I mean, it's something that we've asked for before.
Yeah.
Finally, on the 25th Street side on that alleyway, you said that the entrance to the playground area has a double gate on the 26th Street side, but it looked like that playground area extended all the way to 25th Street with a single gate at 25th Street, which completely defeats the purpose of the double gate on 26th Street. So we would need a double gate on the 25th Street side of the playground as well.
There's one there. It's shown as a
What's-
double gate there.
What's not clear from the plan that there's a double gate on 25th Street?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
It was not clear from the schematic. that
Okay.
There was a double gate on the 25th Street side.
Sure.
You good?
I'm good, thank
All
you.
right, well, hold on. Candace, you got your hand up?
Yes. Hi there. I actually had a question. I was surprised that bathrooms didn't pop up in the wording. The word that the community had asked for. You can't hear me?
I'm not hearing you clearly.
Bathrooms, Sally, please, what's the correct term for them? The comfort stations?
No, we
Well,
call them
no.
public bathrooms now. Actually, we're going to meet you where you are. Yep.
We call public restrooms.
Public restrooms,
We've
yeah.
changed our terminology.
So we're adding a new system for water for the play area. Is there any way in the 2 to 5 year old area, we can set something up, maybe a single occupancy bathroom? Those children that age, that's when they're going to the restroom. And this is a park. Like I said, I was very surprised restrooms did not come up in the wording. If there was discussion, if anybody went to the thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
They did.
Leslie did.
Leslie did, okay. If that was brought up at all, in the public.
So it was brought up in the input meeting. It's not something we have funding for to do in this park, and it's a relatively small park. And those public restrooms take up a lot of space, and it would really eat into the playground space that we have available. On a larger site, it's something we can look into, but that's something that would basically take up our entire budget for the playground here and take up a large chunk of the site as well.
And
Would it be possible? Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Janice.
Would it be possible to bring up the slide with the playground with the actual locations? I'm just trying to think of where you guys, like, if there's some kind of planter or something in that area, we can make it where it is an actual selection. So if a bathroom is able to be built in that area, we can go ahead and see if we just need to knock down a couple, not a tree, but maybe some of the planters instead. Is there any place in that area?
If we had a public restroom, it would essentially take up either like the swings or the 2 to 5 play area. They're large structures. It's not like a small thing that we can place in there easily. And it's very expensive as well.
I want to add that later in this conversation tonight, when we talk about budgets, we are going to be talking about the need to renovate existing bathrooms in a number of parks.
Candace, you good?
I tell you, we are I should say that we are experimenting with different types of restroom facilities, and I think maybe what I heard a little while ago was the suggestion that we have maybe a single unit, and we are looking into possibilities along those lines, and maybe there'll be a future opportunity where we can find something that would fit within this playground, that we could come back and maybe install something somewhere down the road.
Yeah, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, that's perfect little area. I feel like we can. I'm hoping that we can find a spot for that. I just think it's very practical for 2 to 5 year old.
Yeah.
If they're not in the area, I don't want them peeing on the side of,
Yeah.
of 7th or 8th Avenue there.
Right. I think we all agree with you on this point. And I'm certainly very sympathetic to the idea, and I've raised it I've raised this point myself. But can I ask who was just speaking?
Candace,
Dennis Hewitt.
Who is it?
Candace,
Candace?
yes,
Okay, all right, but maybe we can stay in touch on this issue because I have some hope that maybe we can come back and revisit this question later on.
I would love that. Thank you, Steve. I do have one more question. To go back to the flagpole, where is it right now in the current area? It's by the basketball courts, where the basketball courts are, right?
No, it's in
Yeah.
it's back here. Kind of in the
Okay.
back of the play area and the seating area near that tree.
The swings, yeah.
Okay.
The swings are gonna go on.
The swings are going to be where the volleyball court is, so it's really in that the back corner of that 5 to 12 play space, and it would really eat into the area we have for that unit and the configuration there. If it was
Okay.
tucked more like along the building, it might be easier to leave in place, but since it's kind of more in the middle, it takes up a lot of space.
Is there a way to move it? I mean, it's a concrete. And then just,
we would-
the pole parts.
If we
I
were
just feel like
to,
it's very funny.
we
when we
would
look at it
basically
here.
build a new one because we often encounter that they aren't very structurally sound when we go to even just to refurbish them. So it's a pretty big ticket item. And another thing I wanted to add, I was earlier when we mentioned this was that I believe that Parks is kind of looking at it like when a park is named for a veteran, we're definitely keeping it. And then otherwise we're in the favor of the programming elements that are demanded by the community, especially when there's a lot being demanded in a small space, that they are coming out more. But that's where we're at.
Candace, you're good, I got you, there's a long list of people.
With the trash, the compost, if we could add, I know we said recycling, but maybe compost, I mean, a simple banana peel go into there, or maybe something in the area. There's actually not one in that area, so that would be something maybe we can talk with sanitation to get you guys at least one on the block.
Yeah, sure, that could be incorporated on the sidewalk near where we have the bike rack, something like that. We have the trash enclosures that are kind of near the 2 to 5 area on the perimeter as well, so
Well,
there's opportunities.
composting is going to curbside collection of composting is going to expand throughout Manhattan in about another year. So, but people won't have a reason to come to the playground to drop off their compost. They'll be able to do it right where they live. So I'm a huge supporter of recycling and composting, but I frankly don't see the point in having composting at this park.
Okay, Candace, you good? Brad?
Hey, guys. Like the changes, question on the 10-foot fence where the basketball court's going in between the toddler park and is that gonna have some type of paneling system on it? And if it does, can it be made for local art?
The intention right now was not to have any kind of screening panel on it.
The only reason I bring it up is you've got serious people playing teenage language.
Yeah.
They have a lot going on there.
Sure.
And sometimes you have the fillers in between the chain link. But maybe it could be a substrate that could have art on it on both sides. Cause it's just gonna be a big opening, little kids, big kids, balls against the wall. I think it's something we should look at.
Yeah.
I had on my notes too, low light on the court. Been talking about it forever.
That was Brett's thing.
Yeah, are any of the lights gonna be solar? Steve, I have to ask.
Not at this point, but they should be LEDs.
Progress. But Steve, we've been talking about it forever over here. I mean, they have the solar lights everywhere, at least a component of it for the power. And the fact that the Parks doesn't go after it is, it's mind-boggling a little bit.
Brad, I want to, to the extent I'm hearing you clearly, you're asking for solar on the lights that they're putting in. I want to connect your comment with Lowell's comment, who wants evening lights for the basketball courts. And it is, I want to repeat what he said, this committee has been asking for improving the evening lighting on the basketball courts for whatever the number Lowell used, I'm sure is correct. It's a large one. So if we're asking for lighting on the basketball court, we should ask for lighting that's powered by solar.
I was just thinking, I ambient lighting for now, because of that's more budget required because the load that they need. But I just think we should ask, because we definitely want the night lights, it's a lot more power.
Just to connect you to where you may need to go to pursue it, since DOT provides all of our park security lighting, that would be the avenue to kind of look into this, because we really are just accepting their park security lighting into our park. They approve the design of it, everything about it, all the fixtures, the fact that it's LED is a big initiative of theirs. And so maybe the next step, but it would be with them. We kind of just accept their lights into the park, and we're kind of accepting a service from them.
Yeah, if I could phrase it a little differently.
Thank you.
John, what I would say is that they are the experts in maintaining street lighting, and we rely upon them to maintain the lights within our park. So anything we install, has to have their approval. They have to be able to tell us that they'll be able to maintain it. And my understanding is that solar lighting is not part of their standard equipment at this point. It's not something that they are prepared to maintain, and so we go with what they tell us is okay.
It's surprising, Steve, if they're picking up that bill. So is it possible for parks to ask them, as a pilot program, can we get 4 lights with some solar tried out? We would love to be the guinea pigs. I mean, I'm just saying, can we ask?
Okay, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Put it in your resolution, so I have something I can point to.
We would love, we'll put that.
Sally's, I'm sorry, Brad.
Yeah, and in the volleyball court, since the actual net won't be up, has it been thought about of having low rims for younger kids to actually play basketball? So a low rim over there on the smaller part of the volleyball court on the side.
I think we actually did think about that.
Yeah.
Weren't we playing around with that idea, John and Alex?
Yeah, so we had an option of having a single hoop along the church wall along the west side there that could be used if the volleyball wasn't in use. It wouldn't have a full key or anything. I mean, it could have a foul line and a key, but it wouldn't be able to have a 3-point line. But that could certainly be a lower hoop.
As long as it's low, because the young kids, they can't reach, and it'd be great to have that.
Alex, that wasn't where I thought you were going, because we also have this other feature in the other part of the park that has
Yes.
lower hoops.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so we do have that as well. They're 3 different heights and they're all lower than the 10-foot standard.
Kids like to interact with their older siblings, and so having a lower hoop in that area that engages them would really help.
That'd be great.
Well, we in the alleyway, we have a unit, which I think John was just describing.
Yeah.
Which has hoops at 3 different levels.
Steve, we saw that and we did appreciate it. It's noted, but
Yeah.
In our previous questions, we had asked whether or not it would be an open rec space and whether or not the volleyball net would be up. Once again, we want to make sure that children are using this space and are prioritized first before adult use. And if I have to use the P word again and how much I dislike it, I'll be very upset.
Steve, look, the one, it's great, the triple hoop, it's like where they started basketball in Kansas with a basket. But it would be nice to get a real small by the volleyball court, that'd be great. And I really want to talk about that 10-foot fence in between, that can be activated for art, local art. And I'm worried about, the sound in between. So if we could look at that, that'd be great.
Well, I tell you, I want to preserve all of the sight lines into the park. So I think that to me is a high priority. I want people who are walking along the street to be able to see inside and vice versa. So I would be very I would be very wary of doing anything to block the views
What about
along the fence.
Foot fence, so what about 4 feet, which is your favorite number? a 4 foot lower thing. So at least when the kids are up against the fence, they're not right, their face is not right on it. Or maybe that'd be a compromise? Right, make sure.
You can see from the proximity to the basketball, at least on that side, it seems like a conflict with the run out zone for the use of the basketball court itself.
You know,
Given the
red
space we
one,
have.
on the red dot, that's the 10 foot fence. In
Yep.
between that and the swings. And I'm saying, Steve's worried about the visibility. I'm not really seeing where that comes into play.
I'm sorry, so what is it that you're proposing?
A screen, so it's a chain link fence.
Yeah,
And I'm proposing that it would have some type of substructure that could have art to it, and if not art, it at least screens off the sections. From the teenagers to the swings.
Right, it's a windscreen that they use for tennis and has for design on it.
Well, there's all ways of doing it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, it's a great opportunity.
so if I heard what you said a little while ago, maybe having artwork on the bottom level of the fence?
Yeah, just some separation, Steve,
Okay,
because you have
okay.
teenagers on one side and little
Okay.
kids on the other.
All
Just
right,
a thought. I know you guys have done it
Okay.
before.
no, I can go with that one. Okay, I like it. Okay.
And then my last one, Steve, is our favorite one is, you know, it used to take 6 years to build a park. You've got it
No,
done.
never.
And what would it take from our council member to help you move it along?
Well, the council member has been fantastic in this case. He got us close to what, $4 million. We're only talking about this park because of your council member.
We're only talking about it because it was a dog park that got killed, so it really
No,
helped.
that's not, no.
Steve, that's a joke, Steve, you don't need to respond. What I'm saying is though, next June to finalize the design process seems like unbelievably a lot of time.
Yeah,
I understand,
I'm gonna push to speed that up.
you know what I mean? Like, that's something you guys control to
Right.
reduce the time. I understand the process.
We're gonna try to do that.
No, I like, if we're gonna write a letter, Lori, I'd like to at least put that in there.
Right.
No,
Yeah,
we could reduce it to 2 years.
Well, I'm with you. I'm willing to do whatever I can to try to push it along.
And then my last one is, can we name this park?
Well,
Should it be
I'd like,
Richard Johnson Park? Should it be,
No, it doesn't go side.
I'm just saying, like, is there somebody that's deserving of the name of a park in that area? And I just think it's a good opportunity.
Jesse Bodine Park.
Well,
first of all, you have to understand that I don't think you want to wish that on Jesse unless he's really, if he's really on the, if you're really having problems with him, maybe. But our policy is not to name things for people unless they've been deceased for at least 3 years. And I haven't seen Jesse lately, but I gather from this call that
May I be clear about the timeline? The timeline as it exists, as it was talked about earlier, was by next June, design will be finished, and then it'll take a year for finding contractors, and then a year after that, bringing groundbreaking to June 26.
No.
Design finishes in June 2024, and procurement would finish in June 2025 with groundbreaking in June 2025.
Yeah, construction should be completed, but no later than June of 26.
Yep.
And you're hoping to move that up, Steve?
I am. I'm not happy with it. I shouldn't be saying that in public, but I would like to speed it up.
In the letter with your approval, Steve, we'll use the timeline I just heard.
Well, yeah, well, that's the official timeline. Yes.
but I should say to the committee, we should talk about a name.
Yes.
Sure.
I would like to come back at some point and pursue that point. I would like to rename the playground too.
All right, moving on, Sally leads it, then David. And then I think we're done in the room. No, we're not done. Sally, what do you say?
Hi, Steve and John. Can you hear me? It's Sally from 20th Street, Chelsea Green.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to revisit the discussion about the perimeter fence height. height, because you know that that's something from the design stage, we wanted the 7-foot fence, and we lost the battle, and we got the 4-foot fence. And we've had ongoing issues. The co-op that abuts the park on the south side has had break-ins, because people are jumping the fence. I should say one break-in. There are other reasons that contribute to that, and we are working with the Parks Department to beef up the security. With other means that involve the shed, it's not important to this conversation, but the fact is that the way people are getting into the parks so that they can do these other things is because they're jumping that fence. Teenagers are constantly just climbing over the fence and parking there for the night, conversations and music. So this thought that it's a question of priorities. What's the greater priority? Is the aesthetic of the shorter fence versus the safety of the community more important? I don't get it. It would be lovely if we lived in a time and age where everybody did what they're supposed to, but they don't. And we certainly hope that the break-in that existed in the building that it was is the last one, but there's no reason to believe it, because the fence is still there, it's still only 4 feet, it's easy to climb over if we want to. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We're still planning parks, 4-foot fences, and it's like an invitation to vandalism. I'm done.
All right. David.
Yeah, well, we're on the fence, I pointed out that at 20th Street, it was a new park. This park already has a fence, and it seems kind of unsustainable just to get rid of it, especially when it may not have much benefit, and you're working with the budget anyway. Regarding the bathrooms, how far is it to the nearest public bathroom? Because it really struck me that the absence of one was part of the strange. The distance?
Well, we have one at Chelsea Park, which is, what is it, a couple of blocks away?
Yeah, it's within a quarter mile.
Yeah.
Still might be quite a distance for someone with a young kid. It's hard to believe that introducing a bathroom could exceed the cost of everything you have planned already. And I'm pretty sure there have to be off-the-shelf kind of minimal bathrooms that you could buy prefabricated that would even accommodate a wheelchair. Have you looked at any of those? Is any things that are available like that?
Yeah, we are looking at all sorts of different options for restrooms, including prefabricated ones. In fact, we're installing a prefabricated one in Fort Washington Park, but it also takes up a lot of space, and I think the cost was around $2.5 million. It's I thought it would be cheaper because it would be prefab, but it still costs money. But we're looking at all sorts of options right now. We're installing something called the Portland Loo in Thomas Jefferson Park in East Harlem. That costs much less. It's a single stall, so it takes up much less space, and we're going to see how that works, and maybe that's something that we could adapt for Penn South, since it would take up so much less space.
And finally, I appreciate the introduction of permeable surfacing with planting, but is there any possibility of expanding on that with permeable paving?
For the current design, we don't really, the courts are not something, that's not something the courts can tolerate with the seal coating, and basically the only other area is along that alley, and that's where we have asphalt with more color seal coat. The only spot that would be able to accept it would be in the front by the passive seating area, because we have such an extensive canopy in the front. There's a lot of root zones, and it's not really conducive to the depths that we need to go to for the permeable pavers there. So it would be doing a lot more damage to the trees to go to that 2.5 foot depth that we need to go to for permeable paver installation there.
We're experimenting with permeable asphalt, which is something that goes under the safety surface, so that's a possible application. However, over time, the pores do clog up. It's permeable for a while. So yeah, we like permeability too. And we're
Yep.
looking for opportunities as well.
Thank you.
But you have to note that I believe we're more than doubling the permeability of the site.
And we'll be
All right.
looking to direct the stormwater into the plant beds whenever possible as well.
All right, Glenn.
Just thinking about like accessibility and the idea of adding lower basketball hoops, are the volleyball nets adjustable to different heights?
I'm sorry, the volleyball nets.
Yeah, is the height adjustable for that, for like
Well,
younger? kids?
we would be relying upon people to bring their own nets.
Well, then, I guess we don't have volleyball.
Well, people are playing volleyball there now, and they are bringing their own nets.
Yeah, they're also bringing pickleball nets.
All right, I think we're good in the room. We have Marty, we have one person's hand in the attendees section. Who's got their hand raised? Can I ever bring them over?
I think that's Arnold Bob.
Arnold Bob?
I don't see his hand up anymore. Oh,
He's coming over. He's coming over. Arnold? You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
All right, go ahead. Yep.
Okay, this is a park for people with disabilities. And people with disabilities also here. And you're going to be having no bathroom over there. You have to reach about the bathroom. And I think it's a great idea to find one in the future. But for the moment, you see a sign behind me here? A signage that says restrooms in English and Spanish. And below, it points people to go to Chelsea Park. I talked to some of the people who use the handball court, the volleyball court. And they told me until the scoping meeting, they had been there for like 10 years. And they had no idea there was a restroom in Chelsea Park that they could go to. So the simple addition of signage would allow people to at least know that they could walk a couple blocks away. Is that acceptable?
I'm having
For me-
problems hearing him.
for me
Yeah.
anyway, you're breaking up a lot, Arnold. And nobody's really hearing what you're saying.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me better now?
No,
Now? Okay, let me try one thing. Can you hear me better now?
A little bit, yeah, really.
Okay. Let's see, let me read.
shorten to the point, please, Arnold.
Can we have some signage that shows that there's a restroom a couple blocks away? As the sign over here shows.
I guess we probably could.
Okay, great.
I'll certainly look into that, and you know, we have a whole sign policy at the Parks Department. I'll have to, I don't know that we've ever done that before, but I can certainly suggest it.
Okay, on a similar matter, only 66% of people with disabilities have internet access. Have you heard that so far?
Yeah, we hear you. What-
Okay, on the Parks Department website, it says, on the accessibility page, it says reasonable accommodation requests. To request a reasonable accommodation in the Parks facility, contact our ADA coordinator. Which is great that you have a reasonable accommodation request form, but only 36% of people who are disabled can actually see that. Can you add a sign to this park that says, if you want a reasonable accommodation, please contact the Parks Department, and have a QR code there so that the 34% of people disabled people who aren't internet savvy can contact the Parks Department for reasonable accommodations.
I think you may be, are you familiar with Chris Noel, our accessibility coordinator?
Yes, I am.
I ask you to make, that's something I would like to see him consider. So could you contact him and or email him or call him and make that suggestion to him let him consider it.
Okay, I'll work with him on that. I will make 1 or 2 points here on the actual design of the park. I've been to Chelsea Park, which has a ramp system for people with wheelchairs. And the interesting thing is, I've gone and done a survey of people there, and I've asked them, have you ever seen a kid with wheelchairs actually use that ramp system? And the answer was no. So what you're doing is putting in a feature that you have 2 blocks away that's actually never been used by people with disabilities, as far as I can see over here. Rather than the ramp system, could you put some other features in there that complement the ramp system that you already have in Chelsea Park 2 blocks away?
Hey, Bob, let me understand this. You want a sign to say, go to the bathroom 3 blocks away. Then you want another sign to say, go use a handicap ramp at another park 3 blocks away. I mean, we gotta focus on this part, Bob.
No. This park, the handicap ramp and the other park is not being used at all by people with handicaps. So why duplicate a feature that's not actually being used by children with handicaps?
Can I speak to that? I think with the introduction of elements like the Sway Fund, which is something that not many parks have, this may become a focal point for the people with disabilities to come to. And then it would be very odd for there not to be a ramp portion of a play unit when we're trying to establish this as a place with lots of different things. There's an inclusive swing, there's the Sway Fund, there's also a ramp portion unit, there's places. So we've got, I think it would be a little bit odd to omit something that frankly isn't costing us actually that much space too. We've got a very exciting unit and it's multi-tiered. So we're actually getting double duty out of a part of that unit. So the ramp portion kind of goes up and under it and gets you involved. It's something that not just children with wheelchairs would enjoy. Running up a ramp is also fun. So that would be my response to that. But I understand what you're saying about not wanting to duplicate, but does that help explain the intent maybe?
You know, that's
Yes,
my
it does.
major parts are to get the restroom and the reasonable accommodation. I don't really care about the ramp. I would just mention it to see what kind of feedback I would get. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold. Appreciate your comments. Are there any more questions or comments? I think I had 2. I wanted to note that we already have flowering trees there. There was a comment made earlier about flowering trees. Those linden trees are flowering trees, and they're gorgeous in June. We did the night lighting. Sorry. I'm not finding my other comments, so we'll just move on.
Yeah, and we're all done here, Marty, in the room and then on the online as well. So if you guys want to discuss as a committee and make a decision going forward, that'd be great.
I'd make a motion.
Hold on 1 second. Sure. We've got 2 more people.
Who's making a motion?
No, hold on. We have 1 more person from the public who had their hand raised. Jeremy?
Hi.
You're not audible at all, Jeremy.
It shows that you're still on mute, Jeremy. I'm not sure how you're even speaking. That's amazing. No, I'm sorry, Jeremy. We can't hear you, unfortunately. I'm gonna bring your hand down and then bring you back over to attendees, and if you can resolve the audio issue, then we'll try to figure that out. Oh.
And my suggestion, Jeremy, is if you have something that you want us to consider, send us a note.
All right. Lowell has his hand raised.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter to the Parks Department listing everything that was discussed during this meeting.
I second that motion.
Does that, real quickly, because I'm gonna be chasing someone down, does that mean you're writing this letter?
No, that's up to Marty to sign.
No, I think I have enough notes that I can write a letter, but and I don't want to bore you by repeating all the points, but there's fencing, there's the comments about lighting, there's comments about recycling. There's a restroom issue, and I think those are the major. There's a basketball hoop comment. Did I miss something important?
We trust your notes, Marty. We trust your notes, Marty. Candace and I also have verbose notes on it. We'll share them with you for the letter.
So there was a motion. Was there a second? Second.
I would just add on the Brad's comment about the solar lighting, that it be solar plus storage so that it can be used at night, not just solar. Sure.
Good comment. Thank you. It's something DOT should be doing all over the place.
Absolutely. And maybe something about the timeline, if that's, I know, something that we want to see done as soon as possible, so just expediting the process with the design. You got that?
I think the timeline should be mentioned in the letter, as we talked about it before, with an expression of hope that it will be truncated. Is that the right word?
Yes.
All right.
And who am I writing the letter to? Am I writing it to Steve?
Yes, to Steve and CCDOT because of the solar, because of the lighting asked on it in regards to solar.
DOT and Eric.
Well,
Yes.
you should probably address it to Borough Commissioner Anthony Perez.
Sure.
The chief of staff doesn't want your name on it.
Okay.
You guys personal self, Steve? You will. I just like to thank Steve and the staff, because that looks pretty good. That was a pretty good presentation with all the materials. You got feedback from the community, so thank you for turning around.
I actually remember what the other comment is, and I think I know the answer, but I want to speak it anyway because we're going to be talking about it when we talk about the budget. There is a request in the budget, the capital budget suggestions for equipment that is fitness equipment. Is there? And I know that this park is largely for local exercise and for kids. Is there any consideration of any fitness equipment in this park at all?
Well,
So
I think we did discuss it, and since we just recently added fitness equipment a couple of blocks away at Chelsea Park, we thought that would serve the need for that community right there, and we didn't want to take any additional space away from the play equipment. Our main goal, frankly, was to provide the best possible playground for kids. We took what we thought was which I think we all agree is a pretty much underutilized playground site, and wanted to make it more interesting, more exciting. A reason why parents would want to bring their kids there, a reason why kids would want to demand that the parents bring them there, why they would want to go there. So we needed to expand. The priority was to expand the space and the available equipment for the kids. And so we thought adult fitness was not really a good fit for this site.
Frankly, I think that's a fabulous answer. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a second. We have a motion on the floor that a letter be written covering most of the points that we heard tonight, and starting out by praising you folks for presenting a design that really is a tremendous improvement over the space that's there now. I thank you for that work. We thank you for that work. We need a vote on this letter. Are there any objections? Hearing none. Are there any present not eligible, or abstentions? Hearing none, I take it that the committee unanimously votes to write this letter. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for recognizing the work of our capital staff.
I was being very sincere. I've been living next to that park for more than 30 years, and seeing it improved is really exciting. I can't wait for June of 25. I think that's what you said was the timeline for its opening.
Well, I don't know. I said that's Martin. Don't put words in my mouth. I said that's the groundbreaking, and I swear you'll be invited to the groundbreaking no matter when it takes place. But I tell you, it's a shame. It hurts to walk past that playground and not see it being used by any kids. That's happened so many times when I walk past and I don't see any kids in there.
One of the pieces, Steve, that is going to be in the letter is concern about the height of the fence. That park is now used in nefarious ways by lots of folks. And I don't see that renovating the park is going to change the activities of folks in the neighborhood who want to use it in nefarious ways. So the fence issue remains, and it will be in the letter.
Well, I would expect no less.
Thank you, Parks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion by New Yorkers for Parks, trying to get us to have at least a 1% of the city budget go to parks. Can we put them up front and have them make their presentation, please?
They're here.
Here, Marty. Can you see me?
Yep. We see you.
Fantastic.
Go, sir.
I hope some of you remember me. I see Matt and Marty. We've spoken for 10 years when I was overseeing the design and construction of the Highland. And I have to say, it's great to see so many familiar faces. I've since moved on to New Yorkers for Parks. And one of our primary goals is dealing with the less sexy, as they say, issues around parks maintenance citywide. So I'd love to give you a presentation on it. Sort of spoiler alert, we're looking for a letter from the community board in support of 1% for parks. And we've been reaching out to community boards across the city. So if I can, do I have access to do a presentation?
You do, Adam. You can share your screen.
Is that Jesse?
Yeah, that's me.
Hey, Jesse.
How you doing?
Good. Let me see if I can get this. Play from the start. Okay, is that coming up all right?
Yes.
Great.
Well, you're seeing the preview. You're in preview, not presentation mode. You're not in presentation mode, Adam. You're in like a presenter mode. So we're seeing your presenter mode. So we see all your other slides lined up.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So if you go to the top, you should be able to do presenter mode. I mean, full screen or.
How about use slideshow?
Slideshow.
Yeah, slideshow.
Presenter mode.
Play from start.
Play from start.
We got it?
No.
No. Go to play from. Go back to the slideshow, then go play from start.
So
That
am I
one.
Here?
Yep, that one.
That's the one I hit before, unfortunately.
All right. Well, it is what it is.
Can you see the slide generally though?
Yes.
Yeah, we can still see it.
Good enough.
Great. Okay, so very quickly, I know we've been here a while. Just about New Yorkers for Parks, we are a 100-year-old advocacy and research organization focusing on all of the city's parks in all of the boroughs. We do our work primarily through a broad coalition that we call the Playfair Coalition. It's 400 plus organizations across the city. It includes conservancies, but mostly it's neighborhood organizations, community organizations, volunteers, et cetera, that all have interest in improving the maintenance and operations of their local parks. This is a list that is intended to show you how many people we have in the coalition. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of them. Our research on the right, you can see we do research by community boards. So we have a 2-page research document that I can forward after the meeting that focuses just on CB4. We do this for every community in the city. And in March of this year, we issued a 1% for Parks Impact Report, which I'll describe a little bit here and answer any questions about it. The 1% for Parks campaign started actually 20 plus years ago when we had a number of folks running for mayor, including Mr. Bloomberg, who endorsed it. And then, of course, the events of 9/11 happened and the city began to focus on many other things. We have revived it 2 years ago because of the importance that parks have played during COVID, because there are so many more people in New York now, over 1 million population growth over the last 40 years. And there hasn't been significant park building during that time. And the maintenance and operations has not improved for parks unless they have conservancies. So just quickly, a history of the budget. In the 70s, the Parks Department received about 1.4% of the city budget. In the late 70s, of course, there was a fiscal crisis where all agencies were cut. Parks went to around 0.5%, and we're at between 0.5 and 0.6% today. Just a look at other agencies since 1980. Literally every other agency's growth in budget has outpaced the Parks Department. The overall city budget has outpaced it at 127%. You look at corrections, sanitation, transportation, all in the mid to 130, 140% growth. The Parks Department has grown just by 72% since then. Comparing us to other cities, most other major American cities are spending a higher percentage of their budget on their parks. They are prioritizing their parks. And when I'm talking about this budget, it's solely operations and maintenance. We not only spend less as a percentage of the budget, we spend much less per capita. And this in a city where very few people have backyards or terraces. We all rely on our parks as our backyards. Those conditions are not great. Staffing and comparison to staffing and population in 1976, the population in New York City is 7.4 million, over 9,000 workers. 2024, we have a population that's 1.3 million more citizens, and we have 1,000 fewer park workers. That's not a good story for New Yorkers and their parks, and more so giving a nod to the previous presentation, it's not great for the parks workers themselves. How does this play out? There's a number of ways that we can do this, all different statistics, just picked out a few here. We have 1 gardener for every 114 acres. San Francisco and Chicago have 1 gardener for every 18 acres. An often overlooked parks asset is the recreation center. In 1978, funding was at 56 million. In 2023, adjusted for inflation, we're looking at a $34 million for a budget for our rec centers. And you can see the very straight across the board rec center staffing, just over 50% of what we had in 1978. Rec centers are across the city. They're basically serving at a much lower capacity than they should, not able to offer the programming, et cetera. And I could dig up statistics on every parks line that match this type of drop in support for New Yorkers. One other statistic I like to show now, again, this isn't about police, but just about comparative funding. The New York NYPD funding on overtime alone is $670 million this year. Our parks budget is, the entirety of the parks budget for operations and maintenance is just $618 million. 25%. Current state of parks. We did a survey recently. We found 80. I won't read everything, but we're seeing a dramatic increase in usership, both because of COVID, but also because the seasons are much longer because of general warming in the city. So you're seeing increased visitation in spring and fall. And when I talk to the commissioner, they're struggling with visitation throughout the winter, which is much higher than it used to be. There are lots of safety concerns among park stewards they've seen in the last several years. Obviously, difficult issues with homelessness, et cetera. From the city itself, there's data that shows 29% increase in crimes against persons and 27% increase in crimes against poverty. We are not looking for more PD in the parks. What we're looking is more parks workers in the parks. more PEP offices in the parks, but frankly, more gardeners, more CPWs, all those staff members actually encourage better use of our city's parks and better relationship between the parks system, parks workers, and the public. What would 1% mean? Again, we're looking at a 21st century park system that's able to use technology, clean, well-maintained parks throughout the years, safety in parks, staff building relationship with community members, quicker repairs. You know, we've all seen how long it takes to repair a park, let alone build a park, and a lot of times they're offline when they shouldn't be. Better maintenance will help that. Comprehensive access to the 10,000 acres of natural areas that are in parks. Protected wetlands, cleaner air, and relief from heat. As we all know, it's getting hotter. Faster response to 311 service calls, which are basically non-existent right now. Better cultural and recreational program, which has really dwindled in the last 20, 30 years. People don't remember what it used to be like, but we used to have parkies in our parks that would be interacting with our children, et cetera. And I don't want to leave it out, but improved safety conditions for workers. You know, DC 37 is the Parks Worker Union. They complain often and have very, very sort of horrific stories about what it means to go open a park at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're just one person, and the activities that are happening there and the threats that they feel that they're under. You know, you've heard about this certainly when I was at the High Line about all the economic, environmental, public health inputs and impacts on parks. In our analysis, we were looking for New York City alone, $1.1 billion in reduction in healthcare costs associated with people spending time in parks, $600 million in stormwater diversion. You know, you're talking about permeable pavement. Our parks right now are not working as sponges. They're working as runoff for rainstorms and storm surge. That can be changed. And then there's an economic impact, which of course, you know, is a mixed bag, and you all know this from the High Line. But it is a legitimate way for revenue to be coming into the city. People spend time in our parks when they come to visit our city, and people who are from our city and in parks are spending money at local businesses. This campaign, the 1% for Parks campaign, was an election campaign and remains an election campaign. We had a forum with every candidate. Mayor Adams at the time signaled his support and has signaled his support since then. We are not letting it go. We have 44 council members who are in support, and that I just want to say no council member is not in support. The council members who aren't in support have either not responded or they're leaving office. So this is a pretty unanimous push on our part. We've got a petition running right now. We've got over 10,000 signatures, people signing in support for 1% for parks. We're pushing on that for the end of the year. We want to get to 100,000 by the next budget. And so that's something we would love to get your help with if you are willing. You know, going back to where I started, what we would love to get from the community board is a simple letter saying, you know, we support the 1% for Parks campaign. If you are interested in this, we have a template. We also have, you know, probably a dozen other examples of other community boards that have done this. We're going through this spring, summer, early fall period to every community board to get these letters. And that's the presentation. I can leave it up if you have any questions about it, or take it down if you have any questions just for me.
It'll be easier to see everybody if you took it down.
I will do that.
Thank you for that presentation. Is there anybody in the room that would like to talk against a letter that asked for 1% for parks? Jesse, you have the floor. You put your hand up.
Yeah, no, so Sally, I think you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just thank you so much for that presentation. It's wonderful and a little bit enlightening, but we all know what the problems are. And I want to say that we're experiencing.
Can we move Sally closer to a microphone? She's not coming through clearly.
I'm all the way in the back. Okay. So, yeah, we have problems in our park with maintenance. I feel that these guys, they're very, very, very short staffed. So it's not that they're not doing their darndest to keep up with it. They just don't have the people. And as a result of not having the people, what's happening in my small community with my small park is that the friends groups are getting together and they're cleaning up the park because it's not getting cleaned up. They are perpetuating, they talk about safety, and we just had this discussion about fences. Why do they continue to put up 4-foot fences when they're not working? So, if they want safety, it's not rocket science to see that homeless people and teenagers and people that are looking to do, bad acts are climbing over these fences. And we've been fortunate so far that nothing really serious has happened except for one break-in in a building. But they're annoying, there's noise and there's all that stuff that comes from people jumping off the fences. And in other parks where they're building them, and they insist on these low fences, they're just inviting, vandalism or crime or whatever it would be. So it'd be great if we could do something about that. I support you. I'd like to get a link to send to my community group, to sign up for, to support the 1%. We're in challenging times, and the mayor is talking about cutting budgets, and we want to ask for more money. But I think it's important, so thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Chris?
I actually have no opposition to a letter. I was going, I'll yield to Roberta, but I was gonna propose writing a letter in support.
Roberta?
Before we do that,
Well, yes, please. Okay, Roberta?
So thank you for the presentation. Certainly no opposition to the letter. I think Sally alluded to this, but this ask comes in the context of a time in which mayoral agencies are being asked to cut their budgets very substantially. And I'm curious if you have kind of context through which you are proposing this ask. And what this ask looks like today versus what it looked like 6 months ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I thank you for bringing that up. The Parks Department as an agency, as I pointed this out in one of the slides, has been just continually losing ground in the overall budget to other agencies. And we're seeing that happen again. So every time there's kind of an across the board even cut in the name of sort of equity among agencies, it's not really keeping in mind what the Parks Department has lost over the last 40 years. So we're doing two things, and they are, they're related. One is we are going to push back hard on the proposed 5% pegs that came out just this last weekend, not to mention the additional 10% that is proposed for the next 6 months. In my mind, this is absolutely ridiculous. At the same time, we don't want to get into an annual sort of budget like thank you for not cutting the Parks Department conversation, because then the needle will never move. So we kind of have a two-prong attack. We've been very successful in the last 2 years of preventing the pegs happening from the Parks Department and slightly raising the Parks budget. 3 years ago, there was a significant cut where the Parks Department went down to around $505 million a year. We were able to get the $85 million the next year pulled back to the high 500 million range, and now we're at 620 to 630. So we're making an impact, and this is truly an issue that is going to be an election issue. So to answer your question much more sort of forcibly, we aren't blind to the peg cuts. We will fight them, but we don't want to get into an annual thankful stance for not getting cut. What we really need is long-term growth in that agency so that we're seeing a change in the way the city prioritizes parks and open spaces.
Yeah, thank you.
Brad?
this is a general question. Obviously, we're all for this, but as a board in the past, we've always not, there's many different non-for-profits that are looking for approval on their special topic. And we've never written letters based on that. So if I want to say, I want to straight up paint all the sidewalks yellow, please support me. We're just not in that business. We're in the business of saying, great job. We'll send it out to the boards. We'll send it out to the local groups. But for us as a board, we've never done this type of support. So I'm trying to understand, Marty, is that something we do now? You know, I just, this opens up a big can of worms for future things too. So we've never done that in the past.
We have sent a letter about the city's staffing crisis to
Right.
state agencies.
But that's us as the board saying, well, we've done this, we've sent letters to the Parks Department saying, give them more funding, which would be part of our budget topic. We do send that as a board, but we don't go support private groups and say, please, we would never do that, ever.
But we're
But it's
asking
not-
for this, the Parks
It's even
Department,
for a private.
not for the nonprofits.
This is the private organization.
Well, it's not public, but they're asking for the city budget.
Right, but they're not saying personally we don't agree, but as a board, we've never endorsed things like this, ever. We might send a letter to Parks or the mayor saying, hey, we think we should up the budget, we believe in this, but we don't send it, we support this specific group.
Then we can modify.
Because that really opens up to a lot of other things.
Well,
Can I clarify something?
It's just a general question, I mean, you know.
Can I clarify something? We're not asking for you to write a letter that even mentions New Yorkers for Parks. This is simply we're a citywide, not-for-profit. We are focusing on an agency budget that needs to be increased. And we have a campaign that is, got a very clear message. And if you write the letter, you can write it without ever mentioning our group.
Adam, we've written a lot of letters in this exact format, asking for more staff, more security, really specific though. And in our budget needs, we write really specific. So we always ask for that. So I'm just wondering, a blanket letter to say to support this, we've never done that before since I've been on the board. Ever, in any fashion, that in any of the meetings or things that I've been involved with. And this exact discussion has happened in our open boards, why we don't do it. So that's just something I think we gotta talk about.
Let's have Lisa come in, please. You're muted. The sound is bad enough without you being muted.
This isn't what I was going to talk about if somebody else wants to respond to this.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay, I wanted to reflect the fact that I think parks it's easy to cut parks because there is so much through the Conservancy's private funding for parks. And I think the city can say, oh, the parks can fund themselves. So it strikes me this is really an equity issue because we're asking for the parks that don't have the wherewithal through a conservancy to support their staff and the cleanup and the nurturing of a park to serve the neighborhoods that don't have the capacity for doing that. So I don't know if that's part of the ask, but I know the city's like, parks are rich. We shouldn't have to fund this. Let them go raise that money. But not everybody can raise that money.
Yeah, if I can just say one quick thing there, you all are blessed with a couple of conservancies near you, obviously the High Line and Hudson River Park. There are many neighborhoods that are fortunate to be near Central Park that obviously has a conservancy and Brooklyn with Prospect Park. And there are a few others. In New York City, there are nearly 2,000 parks. And the number of conservancies is, roughly about 45. And of them, maybe 5 to 10 can raise any real money. So there really isn't, outside of a few real marquee parks, there isn't a lot of private money going into the parks. And the vast majority of New Yorkers and New York City parks are solely dependent on the Parks Department to operate and maintain them, which is why we're here.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you so much, Martin. To that point, Lisa, it was funny, we were having a conversation earlier about a number of census tracts in CB4 that if it were not for luxury development would actually fall under federal need for funds for infrastructure and health. They exist here in Chelsea, and so it's incredibly important that we write a letter in support of equity. When we look at 1% of the ask in the total budget, we're at 120 billion for cities, so we're about million in the budget as a floor. CB4 being one of 56 boards would only see $2 million of that it was just like a flat giving, if everything was just given with, general equity and not equitable. Or equally, not equitably, rather. So I do believe that we can write a letter in support of a budget that identifies our parks within NYCHA, our parks just outside of those census tracts that are in need, that we've highlighted letters in the past. And we have also highlighted items within the budget that far exceed a $2 million annual giving from the general funds of the city. And so we don't have to call out this particular group, and you're right, Brad. We do have a stance where we don't generally put out letters in support of an organization. So this is a great workaround to say, this is what $120 million looks like. This is what CB4 would get. And in the past, CB4 has asked for this amount of money in funding. And year over year, we don't get 100% of that, but we still persist. It is still a high, like these items are still high item budget items year over year for our people. So I think we can write a letter. We should write a letter. And I would make the motion to write a letter capturing our previous asks to the city and capturing just exactly how minuscule $2 million for the CB4 and the general needs that we have is. It's a drop in the bucket. And so this is 1% just a start.
I second that. So Marty, did you hear that? Marty?
I heard most of it. I did not hear well enough the structure of the letter that Chris was recommending, and I would like to see the boilerplate letter that Adam would send to us, and I also think that a letter asking a budget request, which is what we need to talk about later in this meeting, for a general increase. It's not something that we've done in the budget requests. So I don't see why we couldn't do a budget request along the lines of something that Chris just mentioned, but I need more detail from Chris on what he said.
So I would actually refrain from putting it as a budget request. I would just make sure that this is a letter highlighting the financial need of this specific CB and what 1% actually totals in terms of need and how that compares to our annual budgetary request from this board. So that way we can show that like our census tract data proves we're in need. We have the parks in need. We do not have conservations. But generally speaking, the spirit of this campaign falls into the line of the priorities of this board.
I would like to see how those numbers actually apply to our board. I don't want to write a vague letter that says, and I think this is where you're going, Chris. I don't want to write a vague letter that says, let's increase the Parks Department's budget for our district. I think we would want to say our district is now receiving so much. It needs, you used 2 million in your conversation earlier. It needs this much more. We are aware that there is a 1%, that there is a campaign to increase the Park Department's budget by 1%. We're being more specific for our district, but I need the data in order to write that letter. I mean, we can say to each other tonight, okay, let's write the letter, but we don't really have the kind of information that a powerful letter like this would need. So I guess where I'm going with that is, if you, Chris, would send me some notes about what you just said, if you, Adam, would send me a boilerplate thing, I would like to bring this back to our committee next month, so that we can, we're going to be talking about the district needs this month and next month, so that next month we can say, I think it should go into an annual request. I think we should be a pain in the ass about funding the parks, frankly, but we need to find the right way to do it. Anybody else want to make comments?
So,
I saw a thumb up, which is always appreciated.
So we're tabling my motion to bring this forward next month in a letter. Provisio that data from Adam and I get to you to draw logic for having to write it. Or support for it.
I guess it's tabling your motion. What I tried to articulate was, how do we take on this issue and write an effective letter? And
Yeah.
just making a motion, I would not even make a motion tonight. I would say that we're gathering information so that we can make a motion next month on accurate information that doesn't make us look stupid.
I pull my motion for consideration, so that way we can move forward now. So
That's fine. Okay.
So, but you're obligated, Chris, to send me some stuff. Yes, please.
yes, sir.
Just an email. It's not art. I didn't fully hear what you said before. I'd like to hear what you say. And Adam, you're on the hook for sending me the boilerplate.
I can, yes, for sure. I'll send you a boilerplate and then I can send you a couple of examples of other community boards that have written letters thus far.
That would be wonderful. And my own mind says, how do we keep this on the table? Chris, that's why I said it should be a budget item. Thank you, everybody. I think this is an important issue. I think if we are effective in our own community in getting appropriate funding for parks, I'm thinking of the Penn South Playground. They're going to build the damn thing, and they're not going to have the staff to maintain it the way it should be maintained. That's what I think that this is the Penn South. We didn't even talk about getting a parks worker stationed more permanently at the Penn South Playground, which they can't do without a bathroom. That's why a restroom is needed. But if you're going to create a park for kids, you need somebody to supervise it. So this is a multi-layered, it seems to me, issue. Am I moving the agenda? Is there something somebody else wants to say?
I think we're good on this topic.
I'll just throw in that you're exactly right, because that's what's going on at 20th Street. We don't have the maintenance. We're doing it ourselves. I mean, they're doing as much as they can. They don't have the staff. We don't have the regular visitation that we need because they don't have the staff. They're good guys. They're all stretched too thin, and so the community is picking up the slack. And you're right. That's what's in the future for the new park.
And that's exactly what Adam was saying in one of his slides, that those parks that don't have conservancy, the maintenance of them is up to the local community if that happens. Some communities don't do it and those parks deteriorate, and that's not good either. So focusing on 20th Street and Penn South Playground, and there are other parks that don't have staff at them. This is the direction that we should be going in, I think. Staff in parks is necessary. If staffs in local parks might happen if the total budget for parks were increased from the 0.6% that Adam showed us to at least 1% overall, and especially in our district. Let's get the data. Let's talk about it again next month. Thank you, everybody.
Marty, I think you can roll right into item 3 if you'd like.
It's great to see everybody. Marty, I'll get back to you with those letters.
Thank you, Adam. I heard you clearer than Jesse. Jesse said something, I think.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for the presentation.
Of course.
So we're doing, go ahead. Somebody's speaking. I can't hear it.
No, Marty, you go ahead. Item 3, it's all you.
I think we're talking about a statement of district needs. I'm not sure that this should be a long conversation at this moment, but how many, I read this document that's in the Dropbox, and how many of you actually read it recently? We've all read it because we read it every damn year. It's the same. So, okay. So here, I'm going to say what my quick take is. Number one is shore power. And in my opinion, that should remain number one. I'm just saying my opinion, and you guys then need to chime in. Number two is DeWitt Clinton Park needs attention. I think that should stay. The third item on this list is electric vehicles. That's messy, but the fourth item, that's messy because electric vehicles crosses over from our committee to transportation. There should be more electric charging stations. Well, that's street furniture, that's Department of Transportation, that's not Department of Park. You get where I'm going on that. That's a messy one, the third one on this list. The fourth one, and I'm not going to go beyond that, is the restrooms. It says bathrooms, but Steve Simon said we should be talking about them as restrooms. In the various parks in our neighborhood, they should be upgraded, and they should be installing a restroom in the Penn South playground as well, as Steve was talking about all that experimentation that's going on. Well, the design is going to take a next year, so let's fold that in. That should be in the letter that we've already talked about. But now we're talking about district needs, and these four items that I've just articulated stand out to me as items that we should keep. Comments, reactions? Chris, I saw your hand.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure we should be prioritizing electric charging stations on the list, but I actually was wondering if we can consider a new item that's come up for the last 2 years in our neighborhood. We're a service and hospitality focused community board in terms of the industries that we support.
Name one.
Would it be possible to ask for the Department of Environmental Protection or Parks that we would ask for a line item or a budget item to remediate and address our lanternfly infestation that we have here in the district? It's an invasive species. We have plenty of tree of heavens.
Have you guys written anything about it before?
We haven't.
So you need to do that.
Okay.
Traditionally, Community Board 4 is not adding new items to the budget requests that the committee has not taken, and the board is not taking a stand.
Well, that's a useful comment. If there's somebody that could come to talk to us about what's happening with the lanternfly, then we could morph that into
Yes.
a future request.
You can, I'm not suggesting it. I think Marty's idea is better. But if you all want to vote on it tonight and write a letter about it in October, you can put it on the note that you would be voting for it for the, put that somewhere in your requests. That's how it works. I'm just saying, I think Marty's rollout is much more, actually the right way to go. But,
Thank you.
I stepped on one the other day. I'm sure we all have. Do we actually want a presentation on what's happening with lanternflies?
Yes, please.
I mean, that's up to the committee. That's not up to the chairs.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, the presentation then would be not just about lanternflies, but about how the city deals with its insect population.
We'll figure that out. We'll figure out who wants to come. Roberta has her hand up.
I like that answer.
I did want to just ask a question about the agency response. There are a number of areas on this sheet that says contact community board unit at OMB for
Yes.
information.
So,
Is there an update?
yeah, no, there's no update. This year's responses were abysmal. Something went wrong with multiple agencies in which they did not get their responses in. And so, they're not good responses. In particular, the Parks Department, something went wrong with the Parks Department. It was not just us. So feel good in that nature that every community board got really bad responses. I will just say for folks that are newer on the board, usually what happens, and Marty, you can tell me to shut up at any time. We do sit down with Steve Simon somewhere between in September and October to go over really what his, what he has on his list and then what we have on our list, and we kind of like really kind of figure that out. You know, former chairs of this committee, like looking at Lowell know those meetings very well. You know, some of the times we agree with them, and some of the times we do not agree with them. But it's one of the few agencies that does meet with us one-on-one, because as we just learned, they have no money. And so they need elected officials to give them money. And so they are more than willing to tell us what they really do need. Most agencies would say, everything's fine, we don't need any help from you community boards to advocate for anything. And Sparks is one of the few that won't do that. So I think we're gonna try to set that meeting up. You know, it's not a public meeting, it's usually a briefing. And then we'll come back with a kind of a short list of what we know is gonna kind of be in the pipeline that we could, you know, that we're on the same page about. And obviously we can push, you guys can always push for stuff that is, you know, beyond that. But I'm just saying that's a good kind of centered list. And just so we understand the process, you're not voting tonight, so don't feel like we need to get everything in tonight. You're voting in October, but you do need to vote in October.
Would you say something? I don't think you did, to the extent that I'm able to hear you. Jesse, would you say something about the follow-up for the abysmal responses that we received? Is there one? Is there possible to be one? I mean,
yeah,
this request requires further study. I have some foul language that I would say about that.
I can't speak for every one of those requests and who gave that answer, if that was even a human being. What I can say is I think the follow-up is that meeting with Steve. So we're gonna get, you know, real information and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think this was not to say that the responses in previous years were like amazing, but this was a particularly poor year for responses by agencies across the board.
But I thought we had a closer relation with parks than that.
Again, you have to think about this is the responses to 59 community boards all writing their budget requests at the same time. So that's what this is. This is not, you know, Steve or someone else in the borough office going, yeah, I don't want to give answers to the CB4. Like someone in the budget office, someone in the number cruncher in the parks department gave that answer. Yeah. And by the way, that's a drop down, right? It's not, someone didn't write that. They pushed the arrow and they said, okay, that's the least offensive or least helpful piece of information I can give them. And that's how that answer got figured out. Matt has his hand up.
So just as far as like the follow-up and sort of the non-response that we've gotten, which from the Parks Department on the comfort stations. So we put fund the renovation and construction of bathrooms at Dwight Clinton, Matthews Palmer, Chelsea Park. So Matthews Palmer, just if folks weren't aware, there was $2 million to put into that particular comfort station in the last budget. So if we do update that, I just wanted to highlight, I think we still absolutely should be focusing on that, but we can sort of, it's great, we're chipping away and we can now focus on maybe, I don't know if McCaffrey has one, but
McCaffrey does have one.
So maybe that could be.
But we need to know the full cost, so Parks needs to update us on the inflation rate of change on the cost.
Right, but yeah, so it's curious that there was, I don't know when you got responses, if it was after the budget was passed, but
yeah,
it didn't even say, hey, there's $2 million.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
I don't have that.
So we should go through and just take a look and see what was actually funded, and where we can sort of narrow and be a little more specific with some of the asks. But that was it. I just wanted to raise that one thing, that there was some progress on some of this stuff. I agree though on the electric charging. I don't think that should necessarily.
So that goes, in some ways that goes back to Jesse. I don't mean to dump on you in any way, but the document that is in the Dropbox says it needs to be corrected in the way Matt was just saying. And I don't know what the process of, if it's no longer a request that's dumped on all the agencies at once, if we're doing something in the meantime and asking for more information on what they didn't give us, then don't we go up, doesn't there create the chance of us going to the top of the pile a little bit more? And if that's true, then what's the process for us?
I'll be honest, I can't understand the question, but what I think is the process for us is I think if Matt has, everybody maybe have these nuggets of information and or questions based off of our requests. I think it'd be good maybe if people feel, here's my proposal, Marty, and I'm not throwing it back at you, we're holding hands together in this process. If you want, if everybody on the committee wants to spend the next like 2 weeks looking through this, and if they know information or want to follow up about a specific thing, then we should compile those questions. And I think we schedule our meeting with Steve, and then that's where we get that information. And then you're coming back in October with the answers to that and presenting back to this committee basically an updated version of the spreadsheet with some, maybe you and Leslie's suggested priorities in the priority order. So you have giving the committee something to chew on, right? And then you guys can kind of play around with that. And that I think is the way to do it.
I think that's right. I think that no matter what priorities Leslie and I choose, because we're only individuals, and impose on this document, that gives the committee a chance to say that's right or that's wrong. So it's a good kickoff.
I also think it'd be good if someone spent the time looking at the letters you guys have done since the last time you've done this. So thinking about like the letters starting around November to now, is there new and different priorities that you might have raised that could be put into a budget request? Maybe they're not, maybe none of them are, but
The lanternfly letter.
future lanternfly letter. But yeah, if there's a new,
I think that's a great idea.
There's obviously a new park, like I was saying, if there's a new subject, like that would be also helpful. I think if someone wants to take a look at those letters, volunteer to take a look at those letters and be able to provide that information, I think that'd be great. I think everybody should, all information should go towards Leslie and Marty. And we'll all sort of put together something for you guys to kind of chew on for next month and then vote it out.
I think that's great. Thank you.
Roberta has her hand up.
This is just procedural. These are just the asks for parks. There was at some point, and I apologize for being late, a discussion of some committee reorganization of topics.
That's next.
But that does not pertain in any way, shape, or form to the like statement of district needs.
No.
So
No.
everyone will keep their old stuff.
The letter is not set up by committee,
Yes,
the letter
yeah.
is set up by city agency.
Yeah, I mean, the statement of district needs is by topic, really. And then under the topic is a handful of agencies. Are you asking, like, are you saying like the sanitation?
Sanitation, and then,
Would we be discussing
Yeah.
those?
No, so sanitation is not, the majority of sanitation stuff is probably not on your lists.
I don't think we
So,
have any sanitation.
so,
But would it need to be added to our list for this, if we are?
if you guys want to be talking about sanitation. then
Could
yeah.
it get to the?
That's morphing into the next conversation, isn't it?
We haven't had the conversation yet, so. If that's all, well, you want to jump to that conversation, then I'll be happy to add sanitation to your list.
So
People go, why are you adding sanitation to the list?
But I would say in the past, when they asked us specifically, say, we're looking for one more gardener for this park, we were very specific on our ad.
Yeah,
And we found out we do much better
yes,
when it's that specific.
yes,
And also our chair will look at the whole, not our chair, but Jeffrey will say, hey, sanitation's being held in this committee right now. It's better for them to ask, not that we're not asking, but we focus more on, I'm not saying we don't want to put it in there, but I just think we try to stay more focused in the past, it's more better for us.
The next conversation that we need to have is the one as to whether or not ASIS gives up sanitation and gives it to us. So
can you just hold on 1 second, Marty, just have a hand up from the public?
Oh, no, I'm actually on the committee.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. Ouch, I apologize.
We haven't met yet. My name's Jennifer Cook.
Oh, hi Jennifer. Yes, I know the name.
You're Jesse.
Yeah. Actually, don't think I've never seen you, so.
Yeah. This is my first time actually seeing face to face. So I just had a quick question on the first request where we talked about shore power, I know several times, and what it said on here is the agency agrees with the request, will accommodate in part. Do they give more information about what they agree with and what they're going?
Not in writing, so we would want to follow up on that.
So they just said last year, yeah, we agree, but they didn't tell us what in the whole year, and then we asked for it again.
And they say they agree in part. And they will
That's not
accommodate.
other than it used to.
That's code
Okay, I'm just.
for something. We don't know what that probably knows better than I do.
Maybe it's hired the guy
Yeah.
that should be assessing it, and they don't have the resources anymore to assess the ask, that's what it means.
We're told multiple times it's not possible, then it was.
Yeah.
Look into it, we're making headway.
So this is progress.
That's progress.
Okay. Cause it seems like a lot of information.
We have to go to them.
Yeah, and we would.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I know this, Marty knows this, that we're following up with EDC about that whole thing and going to look at the actual cruise terminals and stuff like that, so. It is, but there is progress,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
no problem. A nice meeting you.
Email.
I know.
Yes.
New business?
All right, Marty, you wanna talk about sanitation?
So you should be aware, Jesse, that for me anyway, listening to the conversation that you just had, I didn't get the main point of it because it doesn't translate well onto Zoom, unfortunately. Lisa, is that true for you as well?
Sorry, we
Yeah.
were talking, Jennifer was asking about one of the responses about the shore power, which was generally a positive response, but left a lot to be desired in detail. And we were just saying that this is, that the fact that they are saying that they're agreeing with this request and they're hoping to fund it in part was actually progress compared to previous years where they would just basically say no, not politely. And so that's what we were talking about. Because we know that they're doing the study, I mean, we know that it's slow moving, but we know that there is progress in them getting that.
You don't know this, but but they were told no, a long time ago, they were told that we were told that they couldn't do it.
Yeah,
So we're starting from that level.
yeah.
And there's a meeting in Brooklyn these next days or so about shore power. And there's the possibility of a walkthrough on shore power. Shore power is still on top of the agenda for us.
Yeah.
It should be.
Is that a public meeting and can we go?
No, so there's a press event that Councilmember Botcher is doing with a fellow council member out in Brooklyn. About a piece of legislation which is advocating and pushing for shore power, which would have a big effect on the cruise ship terminal that we have. So that's one thing. I'm happy to give that's a public event, everybody can go.
That supports us.
Yeah, what Marty's talking about is not necessarily a tour about shore power, I'm sure we'll have questions about it, but it's a tour of the cruise terminal that Leslie was trying to set up. What?
That's not,
Well, you know, the tour of the cruise terminal is here, the press event is out in Brooklyn. The two separate locations, the two separate things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Marty, you want to talk about sanitation?
it's a dirty subject, but I'll be happy to. ACES has suggested that they want to remove the streets from their name. And Leslie and I know Leslie spoke to you, Jesse, agree that taking on the streets part of that topic benefits us because it puts sanitation in our bailiwick. That means that when we invite sanitation to talk about, for instance, composting, it's going to be their big thing. And this allegedly our district gets composting October of next year. that would come to us. The same thing with street corner collections. That would come to us. There's a lot of stuff that fits in the environmental bailiwick, it seems to me, that sanitation fits into as well. So it struck us as a good idea, but we didn't want to do it without your input.
Mark Lowell has his hand up, Marty.
Part of the S in ACES and the street life is they handle all of the SAPO permits as well for street fairs and whatnot.
Well, this is under your rule. If you remember.
I wanted to move it. I didn't know we actually moved it.
We moved it.
I knew we wanted to.
Yeah, no, I think it's
my idea to move it. So
I know, it took a couple of swings, but we got it.
I forgot we got that done.
We got it done,
Which
so, yeah. okay.
Yeah, no, I think the rest of this makes sense, Marty.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that the street fairs would be part of it. That doesn't seem to make sense to bring over.
So just I'll give a little history. So the reason why ACES has an S at the end of it is because prior to it being called ACES, it was called Q of L and quality of life. And one of the things that quality of life did, besides a lot of dealing with people complaining about bars, was the street fairs and review of the street fairs and permits, block parties and things like that. So when we created, when quality of life turned into ACES, no one really knew what to still do with those, so we kept S for street life to do with that.
There was also a concern that ACES would not have enough subject matter.
Yeah, right, that's true. Right, that's true. And so but that things have changed, things have evolved. Education has become extremely much more important and larger of a subject. And then the reality is that the street fairs and the block parties became less and less. So Lowell had the idea of let's move that into transportation's world, because that's the end of the day, it's in the street, it's on the street bed, that's their purview. So that was removed. The bars, the complaints about noisy bars, they were brought back to BLP. So you started slowly stripping away all of these things that were under street life. And so the final, I don't mean to, and I defer to Josephine, who's the co-chair of ACES, was to decide that, let's make the committee focus strongly on education, arts, and culture. And so that's the idea. And I think Leslie, who's part of that committee, really thought it would be a great place to bring sanitation back to you guys. And I think it's great that Leslie is on both committees, and it does help, and that transition will be helpful.
Got another question.
Yep.
Are we going to rename our committee to add an S?
Please, you do not need to.
Say not to give up on S, you could just put schools at the end. The S, you can't have the S.
I want to call us reps.
No, I think Marty's right. Sanitation falls under an environment.
Yes.
So I think it's solid.
So listening to your conversation just now, I don't want to say, okay, we'll take the S. I think we need to have a conversation and come back to this next month among us that says exactly what does it mean that what is it we're taking on? Let's be more precise about what it is. And if it's sanitation relationships, then I'm cool with that. If it's
Hi, Marty.
Hi.
So I think it makes a lot of sense, and this is something that I questioned prior to becoming a public member of this committee, as to why sanitation, which is so heavily involved in the environment, is not part of our committee. And I think in general, when we think about the environment, it also talks about our streetscape and the environment we live in and how we keep that environment clean, which is sanitation. So I think everything sanitation related would then fall under WPE.
That's not street fairs, right?
That's
No,
not
not
street fairs.
street fairs.
Marty, I think
But-
if you asked for a vote right now, I think you would have unanimous decision that they all take sanitation.
I'd like to make a motion.
I agree with you that everything that's sanitation related should come to us. I also want to be cautious about what it is that's exactly coming to us. I don't want to see us taking on sanitation and there was something that we didn't know about.
Well,
I
I
can-
just say one thing,
Yeah, go ahead.
the trash storage bins in the streets, that is transportation, that's steam, right?
And there's always gonna be overlap in anything
Right,
that's
okay.
a pedestrian right
That's
away,
fine.
but yeah, I mean, there's certainly gonna be overlap between the two committees, but I will tell you this, Marty. Over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been nothing of, I don't really, and if I'm wrong, someone in ACs could tell me, that was related to the street life component. That we discussed it in ACES, that was not sanitation related. Right, so I mean, there's no hidden topic you're gonna be adopting.
I think the other thing would probably be Blake's thing with the magazine things, but that would then be
Yeah.
transportation, right?
Yeah, but I mean, again, that was member initiated. You know, that's, as Josephine was saying, if there's people, I think the consensus of people interested in sanitation stuff is in this committee, not in ACES anymore.
Right.
And so I think it makes sense to be there.
So am I hearing that there's a consensus that we take this on?
Yeah.
Any,
And I
any,
think close that motion.
I'll even make a motion, Marty, if you want.
I second it.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah,
What is our chair Jeffrey, does he want this move?
I think
What
he's,
does it matter?
yeah, I think he's. As long as it goes somewhere and there's an interested party.
I don't know that anything and all relations between the community board and the Department of Sanitation go through this committee.
I second that.
Third.
I can't promise you that, but okay.
I thought that was the same way to word it, take care of Marty's concern, yeah, there, so I wanted.
it sounds
Okay.
like it sounds like we agree.
Yeah.
So moving the agenda in that case, this is old business, new business. Is there anything?
I really have a real question. We're mandated to be here. We were at that meeting the other day. These people are on Zoom, they're doing it's executive. Why are they not supposed to be here?
We don't have room in the room for
No, it's a real
They
question.
can be here. I honestly, I'd say that, I'd let them know that they don't have to be here. We encourage, we do encourage because of the size of the room. And because honestly, for health reasons, that I don't want 50 people in this room. Breathing on you all, we strongly put out language in all of our agendas, if you see them in our notices, that we strongly encourage the public to attend virtually.
It also.
But that doesn't mean,
This is not public, I'm talking about the percentage.
no, I understand that, but I give them the same option. I say that they can,
But we don't have that option.
you do not have that option. If you
That's
don't
why
want collectively, I gotta say, collectively as a committee, you would rather have them in the room, and that's how you want to do it. I'm happy to communicate that to a future agenda items.
Brad, I wasn't being sarcastic, that's the real answer, it's about space.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can see, right? Listen, we're growing, as people get more used to coming to these meetings. And you all have to show up by law, like, we have to come up with some ideas here. I mean, this is an evolving situation. You know. But again, collectively, if you all want them to come in person, I'm happy to say that, but.
It's easier to throw eggs, Steve, these here.
I do have new business.
All right, Marty, we have new business.
I think there's no more business unless there is.
Chris LeBron has new business.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll make this brief. We've just completed the renovation at the recreational courts at Hell's Kitchen Park. That recreational court does not have a name. I would like the committee to consider a possible naming of that court after Tom Mullen Senior, Father Brian, Joe, and Ken and Tom Junior Mullen. Brian and Joe were professional hockey players on an international level. It's an opportunity for us to highlight how important parents and guardians are to our community. That Tom Senior had put it upon himself to build out a street hockey group that eventually turned into one of the oldest third-tier junior hockey league ice hockey programs in the country. It's the Metropolitan Junior Hockey Leagues in its 58th season. Without Tom Senior, a number of Hell's Kitchen children in the 70s and 80s would not have built out an interest in hockey, gotten off the street, and received scholarships, or just stayed out of general trouble. I would like to I propose that or propose a consideration to move forward in naming that area after a very, very good man. And
Is he still alive?
he's dead,
How long?
more than 3 years.
Okay. So is that the real rule?
Yeah.
Yes,
That's what they said. No.
He was like Marty, you got a little time.
Can I make a suggestion?
yes, please.
Right, so I think if we're open to entertaining this idea, I think as new business, you guys, again, similar to what we just talked about, put it on for the agenda for next month. You take the time to put together something in writing, so everybody knows who we're talking about, a presentation.
Sure.
You wanna have someone come in and, talk about it, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
And I think that'd be helpful for the committee to, right, so.
I think there's more that needs to happen than that, Jesse. I think naming a public space is an important, and I have no doubt that Chris is right about choosing this person, but there needs to be a process of selection of names. A member should not be able to come to a committee and suggest a name without there being a submission of a number of names in some kind of a committee, reviewing those names and choosing among them. I don't know that we have a process, but if we're going to start the naming game, we need to develop a process before we do it.
Take it to exec.
Sally and Katie.
I just want to say, I don't know if it's a formal process, but when we named Chelsea Green, the Parks mandated that we submit names to them and they chose the name. That's how it worked.
So they chose Matt?
I don't know if it's policy. I don't know if it's policy. I just know that that's how it was done. We were charged with gathering names. We did that. We sent it to Parks, and then the commissioner picked the name. That's how it worked.
Just for clarity's sake, this is not naming the entire park.
No,
This
it's
is
just the
naming
recreation
portion.
space, yes.
Right, so we don't even know, well, let's just take a step back. We don't even know if Parks would like have anything to say about that, but.
We literally did that at Brownsville after a young man who was killed on a basketball.
I understand, I'm just
So,
saying, that while I'll do the due diligence of talking to Parks and you do the diligence of putting together something for the committee, Katie.
Would it be like a co-naming of a street? Because that is, someone suggests that it's not like they put in a bunch of names and say, pick one. They say this specific spot has a history and that's why we want to
But
do it. I think this would be similar.
Bringing it up, it's not just, right, it's not a random thing, it's connected to the person's history of what they did for hockey.
And it's not the entire park, it's just a portion of the.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's
it's actually pretty complicated to get a street code name. You have to submit legislation to the city council, has to be voted on. And getting a park name is really at the discretion of the Parks Department. So I think your recommendation is a good one, like have your conversation with Parks, I'll come with some
They're trying
information.
to do all these co-namings all the time.
It's actually.
It seems like for-
We'll talk about that after you return.
Thank you very much. I'll do that, Jesse, and then I make a motion to adjourn if there's no other business.
Lowell has a business. He's standing up. He wants to give us some information.
No, I'm going to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for helping this virtual, non-virtual stuff along. Have a great evening.
Well.